Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Griffin. I'm a product leader and product coach, especially focused on AI. And I am so thrilled today because I have a very special guest here on the Product Mind Lab this week. She is a builder of, I'll say, to me, like a pretty well known AI tool in the PM world. Today I have Jana Wellander. She is I'm like also switching back and forth between all my windows, everyone. So please excuse me. And I'm also just super excited to have her here. So I was super excited, that she was like available to do this. But she is the CEO and co-founder of Kraftful, an AI assistant that helps 50,000 product teams build better products by listening to users at scale, which is pretty incredible. Kraftful has been named the most innovative company by Fast Company and has won multiple product awards and is backed by Y Combinator, Google, Samsung, and other exceptional investors and entrepreneurs. Yana is also a Stanford Fellow and a senior venture partner at Pioneer Fund, and has been invited to speak at Masters of Scale, the UN Internet Governance Forum, Yale, NYU, and many product events and podcasts over the years. So, welcome so much to the Product Mind Lab. I'm so excited. When you and I was able to get you on here, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions to ask you, especially someone who is building so much in the AI space. So, yeah, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
being
having
on.
me. I am so excited. I'm so excited to join. So very excited to chat.
Awesome. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and we talked a little bit about this before the show, actually, because it sounds like a little bit today and also your week, some of the things that come with building, probabilistic products that came up. And so, you're building this product that's AI native. And I would love to hear, what it's been like building with this technology that is probabilistic and not deterministic, especially around balancing quality and user expectations, because sometimes we do something where we're like, awesome, it works, and we tweak one little thing, and that one little thing changes the level of quality significantly, sometimes for better or worse.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. We had that sort of thing happen actually this week, as I mentioned, and even today. We're working on a very new, different part of the product, and so suddenly have to deal with that piece where models are not necessarily behaving the way you would expect them to. So really rethinking how to do that. But I would say for every other kind of existing part of our product where we use large language models extensively, we've done a lot of work to make them behave in the most predictable way possible, even though they are not, right?
Yes.
And so some of that has been around just breaking down tasks into
Mm,
lots and lots of small
yes.
steps. So really limiting the model's creativity, making it
Yes.
do the one thing we wanted to do, and be smart but not creative is sort of the thing
Absolutely.
that
Like
we're
craft,
trying to get it to
yeah.
do.
That task
And
decomposition is really, I'll say, like really tricky to get right, but when you do, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and it's tricky because I think there's so many different things that change, particularly when you're constantly, as we do, are changing the models you use, because we're always trying to use kind of the latest and greatest models. Last week we switched a lot of our processes over to the new O3 Mini High model
Amazing.
on Friday, actually when it launched,
That
and
actually
so.
makes a lot of sense what you said earlier about some of your challenges you've had in the last week.
Yeah. Well, actually, we haven't had challenges with that model, surprisingly.
Okay.
Not so
Oh,
surprisingly,
amazing.
because of how
Okay.
we
Amazing.
how we do things. We've had
Beautiful.
challenges with a completely new product that we're working
Okay.
on, that's sort of
Oh,
in
okay. Cool.
development.
Okay.
That
Awesome.
that
Awesome.
is going to
Awesome.
be also leveraging that model in combination with other things, and just be turning data in a completely different way. So that's kind of we and I think the reason we haven't struggled with when we do introduce a new model, even if we do it
Hmm.
rapidly like we did
Yeah.
on last Friday afternoon,
Yeah.
is that we have very extensive evaluation process where
Mm.
we as part of our analysis we break down tasks into multiple steps, and then each step is performed by its own, essentially its own model. It could, in at different times,
That
we
makes
have a
sense.
combination of different models. And then the
Yeah.
fact that you can run evals on every step means that we can really
Yeah.
make sure that the model behaves in the way we would expect it
Mm.
to, at least on a kind of a set, difficult data set. And then that way we can ensure that it is going to behave the way we would expect. But we sort of, there's a lot of different components to how we've done it,
Yeah.
to be as accurate as possible under the hood.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And this is really brief. For those who are watching this or listening to this, who are like, I keep hearing about evals, right? When you're actually building a product like this, and this is not some sort of, hey, this is kind of a in research type product. This is like, hey, this is live in production. We have real users using this. What does that mean? What does that look like to use evals? Because I'll say not everyone is working at a place where, like, they might be working at a place that is, they are using these models, but they haven't yet gotten to the place where they're actually doing evals on the
Yeah.
models and what happens when things are
In production.
changing.
Yeah. So I'd say sort of the most important thing is really identifying a repeatable test that where you can test the model
Yeah.
to see the model or multiple models. In our
Mhm.
case, oftentimes we're testing two models against each other,
Yeah.
where you can say, here is the input, the expected input, and that expected input in our case, because we're analyzing user feedback, it's a certain set of
Yeah.
feedback with essentially with a prompt, and then we have an expected output.
Yeah.
And then when we're running an eval, we're testing to see, are we getting the expected output, or is there
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
off? And sometimes we're not getting the expected output; we're getting better output because we're suddenly
Oh,
testing better models, and that's also part
that's
of part of
that's
the equation to be
amazing.
able to identify it. But at least then we know that it's better because we have an expected benchmark that we're measuring against.
Amazing. Not just like Twitter outlandish AI hype statements from other people. You actually have the proof there. The proof.
Yes.
That's awesome. And I know Kraftful is intended to help product people be able to look at this sea of feedback and information and be able to make decisions based on these insights that are surfaced. And how have you been navigating building this experience that balances the need for them to actually use their own product thinking, and also with this kind of very human tendency to be like, oh, the computer is smarter than me? How do you kind of
Yeah.
balance that? And are there certain decisions or like UI approaches that you use to create that balance?
That's a great question. I think it's a great point that we have this tendency of being like, oh, this has a lot of compute built into it, so it should
Yes.
be smarter. And yes, we've really thought deeply about what kind of building around the product workflow, and
Yeah.
thinking about what are the things where we can really make PMs be
Mm.
leveraged and make it really easy for them to make decisions, and then made it so that when there is a decision step, any kind of like human decision step that to be made, it's very clear that that's
Mm.
what they need to do. So to give you kind of a tangible example,
Yeah.
Kraftful accumulates all the feedback from all of these different sources: support tickets, call transcripts, app reviews,
Yeah.
survey data. It crunches it.
Ah.
It gives you a list prioritized based on number of mentions, and you can kind of click through and see where exactly it came from. But then it stops, right? This
Yeah.
is the report. It gives you that
Yeah.
report every day, every week, and so forth. Then it is for the PM to come in and look at this list and click on the ones they want to put into their roadmap and start formulating PRDs with,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then and kind of start sorting it into bigger projects or epics, or to use
Mm.
AI to write user stories
Ah.
that we automatically then sync to Jira or Linear. But there are these like decision points where a
Yes.
human is making decisions that this came from, like, this item came
Yeah.
from 100 users, and I think this is actually something we should act on. And then
Yeah.
we click, and then it's sort of like the model is doing this. It's writing the user story for it. It did crunch all
Mm.
the data, but a human is
Yeah.
coming in and deciding that this is actually important. This is what my team should be
Mm.
working on.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And I, you are a, AI native companies, so also I have to ask the question also about more of the behind the scenes, how you're building the product itself. And so I was really curious about AI prototyping and if your team is doing that and how it's changing how you and your team work. And if you're using it, do you have any examples?
Yeah, I would say we use AI a lot, a lot, a lot,
Yeah,
in every
yeah,
possible way. And so obviously we use Kraftful for all of the product management
yeah,
piece, essentially. We use AI in software development. We do not
yes,
use AI for prototyping. And I
yeah,
think that I sort of thought about this. I
yeah.
put together a workshop for PMs earlier this year,
Yeah.
and I got a couple of questions about prototyping, and I was sort of, it's actually not because we haven't
Hmm.
used it.
Yeah.
I ended up not including it in the workshop, and I was sort of
Yeah.
reflecting on why have we not? And I think the reason that ultimately occurred to me is that
Yeah.
prototyping kind of, when I think back in my product management days, it's always been
Yeah.
something I've done when I've been in an organization where I needed to
Yeah.
kind of make the case for why we're going to build something. And in
Ah, I see.
a
I see.
small startup, we're all moving in the same direction. There is no
Yeah.
prototyping. There's no room for prototyping. We're going
Yeah.
to be deciding what we build, and then we're going to build it, and we're going to use AI to build the software. But that's going to be production
Yes.
software, right? There is
Yes.
no prototyping step. So
Yeah.
actually, we haven't necessarily used any of the kind of the prototyping tools.
Yeah.
We have used software tools like Cursor and
Awesome.
other
Awesome.
tools.
Well, and I think it's so important for people to hear that because I think we're in this stage where AI can do a lot, but it can't do everything. And so, depending on what an organization does, its size, what they're specifically building, how they're building it, different tools make sense at different times or just for different organizations. And it's something where I keep hearing people say PRDs are dead, which actually my latest the product mind lab post before this one, I actually talked about why I think that's actually a very problematic statement. I'm like, sure, for in organizations where you're small enough and you have that alignment, great. But there's many organizations where I don't know how you're going to communicate the choices or the why behind a lot of the things someone even builds in a prototype. And even the prototyping itself, there's reasons why you want to use it and when, and not just taking something and saying like we're not going to think about why, we're just going to use this tool because someone on
Because
Twitter told us
everyone's
to
doing it.
always be
Yeah.
using it. So I think that's one of the things I also have the goal of talking about here on Product Mind Lab is stuff like you just talked about, of like here's the reality of how people are actually doing it, because there's a lot of hot takes that are really for clickbait out there around what everyone should be doing with AI and not contextualizing it.
Yeah. And I think that
Yeah.
that's, I see this all the time, and that folks
Yeah.
come in and they sort of ask me, how should I be using your tool?
Yeah.
And the answer is there is no one way to use it. We have
Yes.
big teams that use it in very specific ways, and then we have small teams that use it in a very different way. We have digital product PMs that use it in one way, and we have physical product PMs that use it in a very different way. And that's
Yes.
that's always going to be true. There isn't just like a
Yes.
one size fit all.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think all as PMs, we've all seen customers get very creative, about how they use our products. And there's always customers who are like, oh, okay, I'm glad that works. And I didn't expect, people to be using it in that way.
Yeah.
Um, my final, or at least I think is my final question for you, if I don't have anything else that you inspire from this is, with all the advancements in AI and there being so many new tools being released, and new powerful models, especially because you just mentioned you upgraded to like O3 mini high, and like O3 itself is supposed to be released fully this year. What does, to you and your perspective, what does the future of product management look like?
Yeah, I think I'm mostly just a AI optimist in every
Yeah,
possible way, but I do
yeah,
think that with AGI and superintelligence, certainly
yeah,
with this idea that AGI is essentially AI is going to be performing as well as humans at all the tasks, and
yeah,
super intelligence is exceeding humans at everything, including creativity. With
Yeah.
that, with AI at that level, AI is going to autonomously be building products. I think, like, realistically,
Mm.
we have to acknowledge that that's going to that's going to happen.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do think that we humans have a drive to create, and
Yes.
that drive to create things for other humans based on our empathy and kind of the desire
Yeah.
to just see people use the thing
Yeah.
we kind of built and exercise our product craft in that way. I think that that's going
Yeah.
to continue. So I think
Yeah.
that both of those worlds are true in the future, and the
Yeah.
path there is going to be really interesting. So kind of, and I also think that
Yeah.
the future is very soon. That future is very soon.
I think it
But
is as well. Yeah.
but I think even before we get there, kind of just a more concrete example of how I think product management is going to change. Today, a really
Hmm.
big piece of product is to prioritize, right? That's kind of like
Yes.
when we think about what's the most quintessential product management task, it is to prioritize, and that
Yeah.
comes from limited resources. The team's limited
Mm.
resources, and you have to decide: is my team going to be building this feature or that feature, or
Hmm.
are we prioritizing this bug, or are we saying this bug we can live with for a little bit longer because we have this other bug that's worse, or we have this other feature that requires a lot of
Yeah.
resources, so we have to build that. And I think that when you're in a situation where AI can in
Yeah.
parallel build software and
Yeah.
ship software,
Yeah.
you're not going to be in a situation where you're deciding whether you're fixing this bug or that bug. The
Mm.
bugs are going to get fixed automatically, and you need to have
Yes.
a process to be able to funnel that up.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you may not even be in a situation where you're saying this feature is going to get prioritized over that feature because this feature
Mm.
is desired by more customers,
Mm.
or it's more important customers, because you can maybe ship the feature that fewer customers are requesting and only ship it to those customers because AI
Mm.
is
So a
able
lot
to
more
build.
personalization in the software is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. A lot
Yeah.
more personalization, a lot more perfection, because you can really fix
You can
bugs at a much
fix,
faster
yeah, I
pace.
think back to all the places where the tech debt was mountains high and having the, I know some people are using Devon, which for those of you who aren't aware is this, I'll say mostly autonomous like AI agent, which,
Hmm.
does software engineering, and some teams have been using it to actually fix bugs. So it's really, really interesting. And I think I told someone else this, I think the idea of the concept of product will still be around for humans, but what it's going to look like is very different because it's going to be more about strategy and taste and
Hmm.
less about the other aspects. And it might not be called product management anymore because so many things can be automated.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
definitely believe in this concept of product builders. So
Yeah.
everyone who is interested in this craft of
Yeah.
product building, and that could be an engineer, designer, or what today is a product manager, merged
Yeah.
into roles where you're operating enabled by AI or leveraging AI in lots of different ways, and
Yeah.
ultimately crafting products because that's what they love doing.
Amazing, amazing. I'm going to actually ask you one last question before we go. And again, thank you so much for being on. For people who are trying to upskill, stay up with the what is going on in the latest of like AI, but product management. What is your advice for people who are trying to the best they can, right?
Yeah.
Nothing can fully prepare you for the future, but prepare for the future, future of product management.
One thing, and I was just sharing this with a friend yesterday, that there's this overwhelm because there's so much information. How do you kind of stay up to date with it without getting overwhelmed? And
Yeah,
my tip for doing that is that I tend to um, look in all the places where I know the latest information is going to be available. Lately, it
yeah,
is actually on Twitter. From in terms of
yeah.
AI information, it just tends to
Yes,
be on Twitter X. That's where you
absolutely.
learn about like the latest model. When the latest models launch, that's
That's
going
how
to get out there first
I do as well.
before.
Yeah.
But what I find really helpful to do is to the moment I learn about a new model having launched, I
Yeah.
close down Twitter. So I just use it to learn about it, and I close it down. I don't read about it. I
Yeah.
go and I
Yeah.
start playing with it. That's kind of
Yeah.
my approach to making sure I don't get
Mm.
overwhelmed with the information. I just get to learn
Yeah.
about what's out there. Is
Yeah.
literally to learn that it exists, and the moment I know that it exists, I go and play with it. So
Amazing.
that's been really helpful for me, at least.
That's actually amazing advice. Yana, I want to say thank you so much for being on. Thank you for so much for making the time out of your day, and also just for honestly sharing so much great information, especially for people who are interested in building AI products and just, continue to build as product people.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.